How would you rate the way the Philippines handled it so far this year?
Look, I think I'm not sure what you could have done better, but at Scarborough Shoal, unfortunately, I think it was unfortunate incidents that a military ship confronted civilian fishing ships, and then that gave the Chinese the reason to bring their military ships all the way out to Scarborough Shoal. But what could the Philippines do? I mean, that was literally an accident.
Yes.
But other than that, I think speaking clearly and standing up to what you see as Chinese aggression. Secretary Del Rosario's refusal to buckle under at the ASEAN meetings and actually stand up and say what he means. Well done.
What about the role of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations?
A lot of colleagues, a lot of analysts are pretty miserable about ASEAN, saying it's falling apart, it's not useful, it's weak.
Particularly this year because of the influence that China also has on the host country.
Yeah, that's true. I see it a different way.
Okay.
I actually think that Chinese pressure will meld the metal of ASEAN together in a harder way. And I think the Cambodians are embarrassed about how they handled themselves. The Bruneians are sort of girding to do better. And I think this has drawn out Indonesian leadership and quiet leadership from the Philippines and Vietnam. So I argue the other side of this. I say ASEAN will come out of this stronger.
I hope you're right. A member who's gone through an amazing transition this year, Myanmar.
Yes.
Tell me what you think of what's happened there, and what do you expect to see in the coming year? It's
a pretty amazing transition, right? Myanmar was sort of the ball and chain of ASEAN, and I've spent a lot of time in Myanmar over the last year, and before that, I first went in '83. But I think there's real change happening there, real change, real economic and political reform. The relationship between the president, Thein Sein, and Aung San Suu Kyi is incredible, that they're working together to try to sort of thread the needle, while at the same time being political competitors. But my take on it is this place is moving. They've made a commitment, they're headed that way. I've even spent a lot of time with the military there, and I think the course is set. They're headed for reform. There are going to be awful bumps on the road. The Rakhine State is one example. The protests around the copper mine and the response to that. We could get into that if you wanted to. This kind of stuff is going to be tough, but I think in general the country is going to move, and it's really good for us.
What's interesting to me there is that these reforms are being driven by a man and a woman, both icons in their way, but obviously a democracy icon, but they're both in their 60s. What is the young generation? What leadership transition will there be? How do you see it playing out?
Young people have this great way of, they're so hopeful, and they're very resilient, and I think that's particularly true in Myanmar. One of the things that shocked me, Maria, was I talked to a lot of the people that were put in prison in '88, and they called the '88 generation, and these guys have no bitterness. I don't know. I asked them, how could this be? They're literally moving to take the country forward, and they're not looking back. And I asked one of the leaders, Coco G, I said, how can you not be bitter? I mean, I think you were tortured in prison, and he said, I don't know if I can explain it to you, but part of it's Buddhism, part of it's just, we have no option but to take an opportunity like this and go forward. So it was sort of jaw-dropping to see that sort of, commitment and hope for change, and I think it gave me a lot of confidence that the country's going somewhere.
You're so optimistic. This is fantastic. What do you see? We're coming at the end of 2012. What's next year look like for Southeast Asia?
I think it's a tough year. I think there'll be pretty good economic growth. I would expect the Philippines to do 7 plus next year, GDP growth. But China remains, I don't think China is going to pull away from this aggression in the South China Sea. So it's going to feel like some great power rivalry in the region. The U.S. is not going to give up and pack up and turn away, even though we won't have Hillary Clinton there, and we won't have Bob Gates or Panetta. We'll have new cabinet members. But
do you expect the same type of focus that they've given to Asia and Southeast Asia in particular?
Look, I think there's three questions Asia has about the United States: pocketbook, people, and politics.
Great.
And I think pocketbook-wise, we'll be okay. The United States is good at fixing, things that don't work. We throw people out and change companies. I think only General Electric is the only company that is left from the Dow, when it was originally formed. So we recreate. We'll do that with the economy. So we'll be fine there. Politics, hard, but President Obama is a guy who says he wants to be the Pacific president. I don't see an American president building a political foundation to explain to American people why we should be in Asia, why we should be trading with them, why security matters. How does this affect your dinner table in Iowa? Yeah. And he hasn't done that yet, but he has the capability to, and I think he might in his second term. The last question is people. And I just don't think you can sort of replace Hillary Clinton. I don't see a person out there. We might have Susan Rice, we may have John Kerry, who's a senator from Massachusetts, but hard to see that kind of energy and strategic thinking get dropped back in and focus on Asia. So we maybe we'll lose a little ground in terms of the personalities. But if President Obama picks it up, maybe it's different but better. We'll see. I think it'll be tough, though, for the Americans to sustain that level of focus with really good touch.
Wow. We're feeling similar things about Hillary Clinton. But anyway, the last question I want to ask you, you talked about this briefly when you came in, is technology. Yeah. A lot of things are changing globally. Social media is a disruptor in many industries. Do you see it? What role do you see technology playing in the next year?
I think innovation in Asia is about blowing up legacy systems, and social media is part of that. It's destructive in a way. It blows up, things that used to be. Correct. But it creates new levels of new channels, basically. And I think we're seeing that all over Southeast Asia in terms of politics. The Cold War sort of legacy government models are being sort of completely changed all over, from Singapore to Malaysia to the Philippines to look at Indonesia. Yes. And I think social media and technology are going to be a big part of that change.
You have elections next year in the Philippines and in Malaysia, Indonesia in 2014. How do you see leadership changing?
2015 in Myanmar.
In Myanmar.
I think governments, politicians have to be more responsive to people now, because social media, everything you do and say is on the YouTube the next minute, or Facebook. And I talked to a Malaysian politician the other day, and I said, when you're out at a stump speech in Kelantan, whatever you say, I'm seeing it in Washington in 5 minutes. So the old stuff, a lot of racial politics that people thought they could use.
Pause in there, work. Right? Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's going to change the way people approach politics, business. It's a new game.
Fantastic. Ernie Bower, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Maria.
Tweet your questions at Rappler.com. Ernie Bower is also on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @BowerCSIS.
Right.
I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us on Talk Thursday.
Thanks.
My God, you're so...